Hello, I'm Robert. Welcome to my channel, and I fact check things that scare you. And this time, I'm just going to talk about why I think that the United States is going to end up at zero COVID, because their policy is to keep the Dr. Fauci has said very clearly that their aim is to bring the numbers down till they're very low, and then to keep them low. And he's willing to relax the restrictions once the numbers are very low. But he's going to keep them low. So that policy actually means that he's going to end up with zero COVID, I think. And the reason is, if I go to the next graphic, how do I do it? Like that? No, that's not it. Yes. So this is the reason. So we've got this thing called the R0, and that is that how many people you infect. So if the R0 is say 0.9, that means 10 people infect 9, it'll keep on going down. If it's 0.5, then 10 infect 5, infect 2.5. You can't really have a half person, but like that, and it goes down and down. And it obviously fluctuates a bit about that number. But if the R0 is less than 1, then as soon as you get any outbreak, it's going to fizzle out and it's gone. And that would include cases that are coming in to your country from elsewhere. And as long as your R0 is less than 1, then they're going to keep going down. So if the United States does, as Dr. Fauci says they're going to do, then they're going to keep on the cases going down. They're not going to let them rise again. But that's the thing. If you're not letting it rise, then it has to go down, because there's no natural process to keep the R0 at 1, or about 1. And we need very, very fine balancing to keep it from going, to keep it actually exactly 1. And so that's what New Zealand did. They had it just kept below 1, and it kept going down, and then eventually was gone. And these are the these blue cases. Blue ones are the native transmission, and then the green ones are the imported ones, and then this is the import related. So these got infected by those, and you can see the blue ones just going down, and then we've had since then, and sadly it doesn't go on up beyond to the present. But since then, there's been lots of these ones like that, of imported cases, and there have been very few of the actually spread in the community locally. So that's what's been happening with COVID in New Zealand, and so that's that's why I think that they either, if you let the blue ones start coming up again, then eventually you're going to get lots and lots of them, unless you put something in again to keep them down. If you could just keep fluctuating, but you've got these 2-week delay to notice, and it'd be very difficult to balance it at exactly just going down all the time, not going down and up and down, just always going down. So that's why I think they're just going to keep, I think, with that policy, and the United Kingdom is trying to do the same policy. So they're trying to ease up and ease up and ease up to such a point, but always keep it going down and never let it go up again. If they do that, I think that is a zero COVID policy basically. And nobody has ever achieved that with COVID. Nobody has managed to keep the numbers low indefinitely. Some have gone to zero COVID, and some have seen it rise up again, but nobody has managed to keep it at a very low level, like is what the United Kingdom and the United States say their objective is. They just haven't achieved that. And they have this idea that it's like flu, and with flu you have it's seasonal, but it's obvious that this is not seasonal. The March was when it was rapidly increasing in the United States and the United Kingdom. That's not why it's descending at the moment. It's not because it's the end of the winter season, it's because we're controlling it. And as soon as you lift up on the control, and what happened in the United Kingdom and the United States last year was when it got all the way down to the summer, and then they let up, and it started rising. And for instance, I mean, in many parts of the United States, then summer is actually, if you're in the southern hot states, summer is when you're indoors. So if it was being indoors that made it spread, because it's so hot and you've got all the air conditioning and you're indoors to keep cool, like if you're in somewhere like Arizona or something. So if it was that, you would expect to be surging in the summer. If it's being indoors that does it. And in the hotter places, basically, it's very much more to do. It's how people behave. It's not to do with whether it's summer or winter. There's very little effect of that sort. And they found that in China with Beijing and things. When they so it's not going. So if it was seasonal, you see, then it could be just because of the season. It goes down, it stays very low, and it's just because it doesn't spread very much in the summer, and that would be a bit like flu. The R naught just naturally gets very low, and it's just about 1 and it just simmers along. But that doesn't happen with COVID. It doesn't have a natural R naught of 1, and there's no way that you're going to, unless you've got, and if you've got a vaccine, you vaccinate nearly everyone. Now, when you've got natural induced natural, when you've got natural immunity, then the natural immunity will spread out to everyone until it's just simmering along, and it'll keep going at an R naught of 1 eventually, because it can't get rid of itself. But now if you've got a vaccine, then it would be an incredibly finely tuned vaccine if it was to achieve an R naught of 1 with just a vaccine. Because so the vaccine is either not enough, in which case you have to do public health, and then the amount of public health will decide whether the R naught is less than 1 or more than 1. And so if you do enough public health, it'll be less than 1, and then it's gone. And if you're not, and if the vaccine is only just good enough, if the vaccine is good enough, so you don't need public health, you can stop it just with the vaccine, then the vaccine will get rid of it. And we've got many examples that you can get rid of diseases locally using a vaccine, and in smallpox for the entire world, and the polio nearly eliminated from the world, and 2 other diseases eliminated from the Americas. So if the vaccine is good enough, we get rid of it with the vaccine. If the vaccine isn't good enough, then we have to use public health to keep it down. And if we keep it down with public health and don't let it rise, then the R naught has to stay below 1, because it'd be incredibly precise to keep it at exactly 1. That's just almost impossible to achieve. And what's the point in doing just the right amount of public health measures and have to keep on doing that indefinitely to keep it at 1 per million indefinitely? What would be the point in that? So you do a little bit better than that and it'll be gone. Do a bit less than that, it rises, you don't want that. So they will be bound to do a bit better than that, and then it'll be gone. So I don't see any policy apart. The only policies are to have it, eventually it's gone, or you go down till it's only a few per million, then it starts rising, you say, well, I'm never going to have another lockdown, like Boris Johnson just said in the United Kingdom. He said he's never going to do another lockdown. So then it starts rising, and you don't go back at all, and then eventually you're back where you started, but with the vaccine, hopefully a bit better. And then so that's the other possibility. And then the other possibility is that you keep on reimposing new sanctions, new things, not sanctions, sorry, new health measures. So you go down nearly to 0, and then you say, oh right, we can ease up a bit. Then it starts rising. You say, oh well, we've got to put in more measures again, and then it goes down. So if you keep zigzagging like that, and if every 2 weeks you impose new measures, and then 2 weeks later you take them away again, and then you see it's going down just below, you're down to a few per million, so you ease up, and then 2 weeks or a month later it's back to 10 or 100 per million, so you put the measures in again. If you keep alternating like that, you could keep R naught approximately 1 indefinitely. But that would be very exhausting, and nobody wants to do that. So and once they start seeing it rise again, then he'll say, then Boris Johnson would be a real bind. He says, do I just let it rise and rise and rise, or do I impose new? And eventually he'll be forced to do new measures again, and you have his fourth lockdown. So you don't want that to happen. And so he's going to ease up very, very carefully and make sure it's never going up. In order to do that, he has to keep it going down. There's no other answer. It's very, very simple maths. So do you see what I'm saying? You know, to understand why I'm saying that just as a mathematician, you have a slightly different way. And it's quite hard to explain it to people who don't think in this kind of pure maths, very unworldly in a way. But it sometimes has very clear applications in the world. And there's just no way that it can stay at exactly 1, because you've got nothing to restore it, to keep it at 1. And you can't artificially do it with a vaccine, and you can't artificially do it with health measures, and you can't artificially do it with a combination of the two. So I think we're going to end up with zero COVID. And I think the way it's going to happen, I've been following the US states, and they are one by one. So I'll just bring up the US states thing, and then I'll stop this. I'll stop it at 20 minutes. Just a minute. Right, so this is my thing about US states. Because it doesn't seem to be any way to go back in time. There's no time machine for the New York Times map. So I started taking a copy of the map just for the hotspots every morning, which is when they update. And so this is how it was a few days ago. All these white regions are counties that have had no cases or very few cases. And a lot of them have had no cases in the last day. And so if you look at that one, then if you look at this one, and especially in Texas, it's an awful lot of white. There's more and more white appearing, just gradually appearing a little bit more white and a little bit less red. And so that is what you expect, because the cases are going down and down. But the most important thing here is that I'm keeping an eye on the white counties, which are the counties that don't have any cases. And those are the ones that are the seeds for what could be a future zero COVID. So they could be potentially zero COVID areas. And so if you look at, for instance, this shows one of them. You see that's Navarro County in Texas, and as you can see, it's going down, and it's stayed at 0 now for several days. Let's bring that up. I'll bring it up in a new window, and but you can see what happened there. What I was talking about, how that you've got to have the R naught's got to get below 1 and then stay below 1, and if you do that, it eventually will just go away. So the R naught here is 0.37, and it's actually decreasing, and then this is actually what you expect. It's really, so long, what the sensible thing to do when you've got very few cases per day, you've got loads of spare resources. You can test everyone. In New Zealand, they do a full gene sequence of everyone who gets infected. That's something you can do once you've got to a few cases per million. If they need to isolate, you can give them the best accommodation in a hotel for anyone who needs to isolate, and you make that required that they do that. That's what they're doing in New Zealand as well. And that just makes sense once you're down to such small numbers. And it doesn't make sense to leave people who've been tested wandering around in the community to do whatever they might want to do. And there's just very few people you need to keep an eye on. And everyone, because it's down to zero COVID and people around, they're not wearing masks or anything by then probably, and they want to be, they really don't want it. They've seen what it was like with COVID, they now see what it's like without it. So they're behind you. And so you've got all this effort, and you've got maybe 100, maybe 1,000 contact tracers to trace about 2 or 3 people. And you do a lot of cluster busting. And then you've got lots of people used to doing loads and loads of tests. They're used to doing thousands of tests, and they've only got to do 100. So they'll turn them around in 4 hours or like the China did at its height. So that means that you expect that to happen. You expect the R naught to keep going down once you've got very few cases. There's no natural force to kind of balance it and keep it at exactly 1. The natural forces have got to push it down further. And so as long as you keep just fairly steady with the other measures, and then you step up on test, trace, isolate, and you do the testing very fast, and you educate the public, and they're very knowledgeable about it, and you get them tested as soon as they have any symptoms, then it's going to do that like Navarro County is doing there. So what I expect, and then I'll just bring up another thing, so I expect that to be happening, and then I'm just going to bring up another thing and again explain about this R naught. Wait a minute. So that's the Texas thing. That's the Navarro County in Texas. You see it's stayed naught now for 3 days now. So it's the first naught since then. And you might get a little blip up like that, but it could well be that it's back to where it was back, and it's never had a day with 0 cases since May 2020. May 22nd, I think was the last case with 0 cases. No, not even that. That's not even 0. I don't think it's had 0 case since March 2020. And if you click around on the map, you find lots of states like that. And even back then, remember, they were under testing as well. So who knows, it may even been their first day with 0 cases since February 2020. Who knows? But there they are, they're back at 0 cases. And so that's what I want to show you there. Then I want to show you the overview of the whole thing. And this the overview page, which you'll find there. And if you go down here and you click at view top 100 metro areas. So if you look at metro areas, that's actually what I want to look at this time. And I'm looking at the infection rate. So this is about the effectiveness of the vaccines. This is another thing that will become much more effective. You don't need to vaccinate everyone. The United States is so focused on and the United Kingdom on vaccinating 70% in order to get the cheap herd immunity. But now look at the metro areas. Then beyond, and that's Boulder Metro County, that's less than 1, and those are ones, and then these above ones. So there are only 19 metro areas in the whole United States that are actually rising cases. So now, if you were to vaccinate, you could just go in and vaccinate all those people, and that'd be a day, 2 days worth of vaccines. And so that'd be a very effective way of dealing with the situation. So I think especially once we've got the clear evidence that vaccines do stop transmission, and the experts would be shocked if they don't. Just because they're reduce the amount of symptomatic cases, and asymptomatic cases are less transmissible. So actually there's a huge difference with COVID, much more difference than for flu. So you expect the vaccination to reduce the transmission, probably at least a half, maybe more than that. So think what reduce the transmission by half. Look at the fastest growing metro area, 1.2, that become 0.6. If you could vaccinate everyone in Charlottesville, 200,000 people, and that wouldn't take very long with the speed at which they're vaccinating. So if they make efficient use of the vaccine, I think they will be able to turn around all the rising cases. And then you have the counties, and that's a blip. I'm not quite sure why it does that, but the infection rate. But if you go all the way down, the top 100 counties, sadly it won't let me go all the way, but just down to 1.1 at that point. So it obviously makes sense to click to vaccinate the worst counties as well. And if you go the other way and you look at just flip the day, get to 0 cases per day, then there are at least 100 counties and they say that there are 0 cases, I can no longer count them here. I don't have another place to do it. But those are all regions that, like this is one of them, of course, then they're all regions that are all set to become 0 COVID. Now, if you go back to now I'll bring up the NY Times map, just a minute. So this New York Times map, and the very striking thing for me, again with my mathematical way of looking at things, is that's almost a straight line. It looks very, very unnatural to my eye. And that means that the measures are getting stronger and stronger as it goes down. And it's really, at least some of it might be more resources for fewer people. And it might be the vaccine beginning to get in, but if this keeps going, then you can expect to go down very far. It's getting faster and faster. It's 44%. It was much less than that before. And then the thing is that some countries like New Mexico, for instance, then New Mexico is starting getting its white regions as well. See, too few cases, no cases, and then that's a whole region like that. Lots of patches that get going white, and New Mexico is particularly interesting because it has a quarantine everywhere except Hawaii. So if you come from Hawaii, it's still kind of recommended. It's enforced, it's compulsory that you have to quarantine if you come from another state, any other state. So what's going to happen with New Mexico when it gets down to 0 cases? Eventually it's going to reach 0 cases per day. That's I think, just by the maths, like I explained at the beginning. Once you've got 0 cases per day in New Mexico, then they'll keep their quarantine up unless maybe Texas goes 0 cases, then they can make a travel corridor with Texas, as long as Texas can do the quarantine as well. So I think what's going to happen, given that 0 COVID is inevitable, if given this policy that the United States is only going to let cases go down, it's not going to let them rise, then the 0 COVID is inevitable with little outbreaks coming from outside the state, which you quickly get rid of. So then we're going to start having states, and New Mexico will be one of them, I think. Why would it change this quarantine policy once it's 0 COVID? And so it will then become a 0 COVID region with by 0 COVID, I mean no community spread. No community spread in the state. So if New Mexico has no community spread, maybe Alaska, maybe Arizona, maybe Texas, who knows? There's a little group of states, and they're all 0 COVID. And then maybe there's some other states that California has found it quite difficult to deal with this. So California still has its cases. Then California will be under a lot of pressure to go 0 COVID, because the 0 COVID states, just like New Zealand is never going to let cases into New Zealand unless it is very, very mild, like a cold or something. Why would you let flu into your country if you don't have flu? And people say, oh, well, it'll be the economic pressure. Well, if they start making trading partners with other 0 COVID countries, then they can deal with this, deal with imports and exports that way, and with people holidaying them. For instance, they're thinking about making a Pacific bubble. So then people from throughout the Pacific will then be able to have their holidays in New Zealand, and vice versa. New Zealand will be able to have holidays throughout the Pacific. So, and then maybe eventually have travel corridors with New Mexico and with China, and so we've already got 20% is 0 COVID, is in my sense of not eliminated, not eradicated, but eliminated as community spread. Because nobody's exactly defined 0 COVID. That's how I think of it. So, so 0 COVID would be no community spread, and then if the entire world can be 0 COVID, then it'll be gone. Because there are no imported cases anymore, because it's got no community spread anywhere. So, and that could happen if you've got a good enough vaccine. It could be just the vaccine. If it's got good enough health measures, we could have, and the World Health Organization were saying we can achieve 0 COVID in this sense all the way through to early March last year. They weren't reported properly, but that's what they said. And then as soon as the lockdown started, and they were again the very first lockdowns for a week or two, the World Health Organization were again saying we've got a precious second window of opportunity for what we now call zero COVID, to get rid of it throughout the world. So now the World Health Organization aren't saying that. They're saying to keep it low, just like the US is saying, and then when it gets low, and just never let it go up again, because they say people it ease up, then it starts, then that's when you get all your problems. And then they say, well, they did say a few weeks ago, and then we can go for the moonshot of getting rid of it completely. And there seems to be an awful lot of, it's political, I think, kind of quite political. It's not, people get caught up in these ideas, and it's just, but we're very social animals, and there's quite a lot of pressure against, so people who used to say zero COVID are kind of going a bit quiet, because there's just an awful lot of kind of social pressure the other way. But I think, but if you're in New Zealand, then you're not going to stop being zero COVID just because of social pressure. And there's just an awful lot of people just saying we can never achieve zero COVID, but they haven't got the science behind them, because how can you say that when large parts of the world already have achieved zero COVID? It's very strange for the United States to say they can't achieve zero COVID when China already has zero COVID, and everyone agrees on that there's no way they're hiding outbreaks. The zero prevalence studies back it up, and they have these occasional outbreaks of a few thousand, few thousand they quickly get rid of. So, and you've got Taiwan, you've got New Zealand, you've got Laos, you've got lots of countries, quite a few countries. So how can the experts say our country can't achieve zero COVID when they've already got these examples around the world of other countries that have? Why not try it? And I think that they don't even need to have that policy. They just need to have the policy that they're always going to keep cases going down and not let them go up again. And they could have the policy of try and keep them at exactly 1 per million, say, but they won't be able to achieve that without keeping them down, going down. So in the process of easing up gradually to the point which is just trickling along at 1 per million, 1 in a million, or 10 in a million, or whatever number they decide is okay. But they can't keep it steady at that for months on end. That's never going to work. It just is inconceivable that they could keep, that the United States say, could keep it steadily at 10 per million for, say, 5 months, or 6 months, or a year. That's just not going to work. It's going to have to be going down further, or else it's rising. Oh, it's alternating, as I said. And so that's why I think large parts of the world are going to go zero COVID. I mean, do say if there's anything I'm missing in this argument, it's this reasoning. It's very simple maths, It's almost too simple, but but that's it. It's just very basic premises. Just that it's either going down or it's up. It's almost impossible to keep it steady unless there's some natural thing to keep it at that level. It would be absolutely incredible to have a vaccine that is just the right amount to keep it steady. It's possible if you gradually are vaccinating people and you just stop at that point, and you stop vaccinating. If for some reason people get less interested in being vaccinated at just that point. But it's it's not like just a few percent. It's vaccinating too. Just the things that would naturally keep it at almost 1, then we just don't seem to have those here. And it doesn't seem likely that that's going to happen. So, I mean, I suppose you could say if you vaccinate nearly everyone and it's just short of that level, and then add natural immunity on top of that amongst the people who are not vaccinated, then I suppose that might just manage to keep a country. Then that would be the thing that makes it, You've got to have something, some level of natural immunity has to come in, or something like that. So I suppose you could just about achieve it like that. If you vaccinate lots of people, you ease up, you've still got people dying, and that's creating enough natural immunity to just keep it so it is keeps going at R01 with enough people infected. But that would be, again, rather unstable, because you get the new variants arising, going through the people who've already had the natural immunity, and then going through the vaccinated people. So I can't see even that working. That might work for a few weeks, but then it would start surging again, and so they have to try a little bit harder and do the stronger public health measures. So I can't see anything that's going to let them achieve their objective of staying very low at a few per million and not going to zero. So that's it anyway. That's my reasoning. That's why I think it's going to we're going to achieve zero COVID. So to say if I'm missing anything, some of you, if any of you out there, you're epidemiologists or experts on this thing, and is there something I'm missing here in this reasoning? Is it inevitable that we're going to go to zero COVID? And if not, why not? And what is the other stable endpoint apart from zero COVID? And I'm missing out. There's the possibility that we can tame it completely, so it is just like a cold, by having a vaccine that is a very good vaccine, also having therapeutics that are really excellent, that you just take some magic pills and you're never going to get COVID seriously. So that is the other out of this. But I think if it's as serious even as flu, then I can't see us strictly along with just exactly a few per million. And we're not going to want to let it rise again and have two flus, have a doubles number of cases flu season, and a flu that continues in the summer as well as winter. We're not going to want that. So anyway, we'll and all the countries that zero COVID are never going to let that in. Anyway, so I'll upload this now and then see what the people think about it.